It says the search is shifting now from broad sweeps to more targeted searches based on leads.
A new congressional map for Texas is allowed to take effect after the Supreme Court overturned a previous ruling blocking it from being implemented. The maps were challenged in court as racially gerrymandered. The decision is part of a nationwide redistricting battle, and this particular map could add as many as 5 Republican seats in the Lone Star State. Texas Republican Congressman Chip Roy.
The fact is that Texas is just, adjusting itself to play the game Democrats have been playing, and it's all political, right? That's political gerrymandering. We can debate that, but it shouldn't be done by race. The Supreme Court got it right.
It's primary day in Indiana with a national focus on several state races.
Indiana voters head to primary polls under existing U.S. congressional district maps after some Republican state senators voted last year with Democrats to block President Trump's redistricting efforts. 7 of them now have President Trump-backed primary challengers in districts the president carried in 2024 by double digits, including in Indiana District 21, where Republican Tracy Powell is running to replace State Senator Jim Buck, who has the backing of the president's former vice president, Mike Pence. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The U.S. Department of Justice is actively investigating major meat packers for potential antitrust violations, price fixing, and creating artificial inflation in beef prices. The probe targets the Big Four processors, JBS, Cargill, Tyson Foods, and National Beef, which control 85% of the market. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins.
In total, there are 70 subsidiary companies that are owned by these 4. This has led to a frightening landscape for cattle ranchers. It weakens their negotiating power, and it risks reliance upon a single buyer. As time has gone on, it becomes more and more clear that food security is truly national security.
They used to be called racists and Nazis and all the list of horribles until they turned on President Trump. Now the mainstream media have a newfound respect for Tucker Carlson and the rest. Steve Jordahl explains.
Tucker Carlson sat down for a long interview with the New York Times over the weekend. In 2022, the Times published a series of articles analyzing how Carlson had, for years, quote, stoked white fear and amplified the Great Replacement theory on his show. Now, reporter Lulu Garcia-Navarro cares about his heartfelt opinions.
You've been at the center of conservative media, obviously, for a very long time. By extension, it's politics. And I want to get your perspective on this moment, on your evolution, your worldview.
Former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump's former counterterrorism director Joe Kent had similar rehabbed reputations recently. Jeff Dickens of Media Research Center says Garcia-Navarro was actually hoping to add MAGA to the Times obituary column.
The New York Times went from calling Tucker Carlson a big racist to now going to him and saying, oh, does he represent the end of MAGA, the fact that Tucker Carlson has turned?
He says The View has featured a lot of these former conservatives, including one of the show's hosts.
Anna Navarro used to be a very conservative Republican until she realized she could become a lot more prominent and earn a lot more money if she played a fake Republican on the cast of The View.
Dickens says Carlson and the others seem to be looking for clicks and dollars.
It's pretty clear what's going on here. There are people that I don't think they have a core to begin with. They'll just go to the highest bidder. They'll just put their finger in the wind and go, where's the wind blowing?
I'm Steve Jordahl.
Oil prices fell back today after jumping yesterday as tensions between the U.S. and Iran flared. More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
As we watch world events unfold and fulfill Scripture, it's hard to believe anyone could doubt God and His Word are real. And yet there are so many who either question or completely refuse to believe it. The God Who Speaks is a 90-minute documentary that hits the doubt head-on with evidence that proves God is real and His Word is the ultimate authority. Watch it anytime and invite others to watch with you. Just visit stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
I'm just getting back from an amazing road trip. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe this for y'all so that you can enjoy a little bit of it as well. We took all of our scholars. If you're familiar with Patriot Academy, if you're a regular listener to At the Core, then you know we have what we call the Patriot Institute. So we've been doing our leadership congresses for 25 years. That's where we just have a week with the students in a state capital somewhere in the country. We get them together. They do a legislative simulation. We teach some biblical worldview, apologetics, policy. They learn more in that 1 week about how the process works than 99.9% of people ever experience. But I always thought, man, 1 week's not enough. We need more time with them, and we need to be able to go deeper and just have experience life with them so that we can sow into them in those tough times and good times and everything. Anyway, so we launched the Institute a couple years ago. Last year we had 12 Institute scholars. This year we have 27. And we just got back from their end-of-year trip. Originally it was going to be Israel. We were planning to take all of them to Israel, had the whole thing sponsored, ready to go. And then, of course, the Iran thing happened. So we were scrambling, man. We were going, okay, what do we do that could possibly compare to these 17 to 25-year-olds getting to go to Israel for their end-of-year trip? So we put together 10 days on the road, and they got to see so much. We spent 5 days in Washington, D.C., where they saw the Bible Museum, which, of course, is absolutely incredible, the Holocaust Museum, which was, a wake-up call for those who had any doubts about those things and any doubts about the ends to which the evils of anti-Semitism can go. And so they got to see that. We went to Arlington National Cemetery, which is one of my favorite spots in Washington, D.C., because especially for young people, it just is overwhelming to realize how many people have sacrificed for our freedom, and for these young people to realize the generations that came before them. And they got to see the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown. Crazy thing, we had one of our good friends that's a Constitution coach that from Pennsylvania that was actually there at Arlington National laying a wreath, and our students were able to come and watch that. And then one of our students whose father was killed in the military years ago and is buried at Arlington National got to go and be there and take the students to see that as well. So anyway, that was really, really cool. And then we got to they ended up doing the White House and just all kinds of other cool stuff. But sort of the capstone of that part of the trip, we went to the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, for an evening tour. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, on the way to Washington, D.C., they stopped off in West Virginia at the Capitol in West Virginia, where one of our Patriot Academy grads serves in the legislature there. He's actually got the #1 conservative voting record for the last 3 sessions there, which I'm very, very proud to say is a result of the things that we taught him. No, he's a great patriot as it is. But he came to us when he was 16 and just did so well, learned the process so well, called me when he was 20 and said he was going to run for the legislature in West Virginia. And I normally tell these students when they say they're going to run at a young age, I'm like, no, you need to go, create some jobs, you need to have a family, you need to pay property taxes, you need to know what it's like on the receiving end of all the things government does before you actually go serve. This kid was different. He just always had that, you feel like he's 40, not 18 or 19. Well, anyway, at 20 he got elected. And so he's been in for several years. And so our Patriot Academy Institute scholars got to do a tour of the West Virginia Capitol and spend time with him, a Patriot Academy grad serving in the legislature there. And I remember to bring that up because then 5 days later, they're at the U.S. Capitol, and we got to do an after-hours tour with a Patriot Academy grad who is serving in Congress right now, Juan Ciscomani of Arizona. And Juan was actually the one, you might remember me if you're a longtime listener, 2 years ago, last year, after the election, he was number 218. So he was the one that got us to a majority in Congress. There was a lot of races not called for several weeks, and his was one of them. And when they finally called his, then he was number 218. Anyway, it was great to see Juan doing a phenomenal job in Congress, just a true statesman, super proud of him. And the students got to, what we got to do was we went in the rotunda. I did a whole, history of the United States right there in that room with those 8 paintings and statues, and they got to sing Amazing Grace in the rotunda. It was gorgeous. We went into the old House Chamber, which is now Statuary Hall, and got to learn all the stories there. John Quincy Adams, Daniel Webster, Lew Wallace, just so many cool stories right there in that room. We got to go into the old old Senate chamber, which also was the old Supreme Court chamber. So it was the Senate chamber. First 10 years they were in the Capitol there, and then the Senate moved up into the what is now the old Senate chamber that they were in for. Let's see, it would have been 1800 to 1810. It was from 1810 to about 1859 that they were in that room, and then the Senate moved into what is now the current Senate chamber. They've been there since 1859. Anyway, so that very downstairs, basement room that was the Senate for 10 years, 1800, 1810, roughly, I think it was 1808 or whatever, and then it was the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court met there up until 1935 when they finally, unfortunately, I think we never should have built them their own building. I think this idea of 3 equal branches is completely unconstitutional and not what the founders intended. They're the weakest of the 3 branches. Go read Federalist 78. Even Alexander Hamilton explains it that way. At any rate, they got to go into those old rooms. Man, I was able to tell the stories right there in the old Supreme Court chamber. The Amistad case, if you ever seen that movie Amistad with Anthony Hopkins, that case was argued right there in that room. Daniel Webster argued some incredible cases in there. Just a lot of amazing, amazing history. So for our students to get to do that, man, it was special. But that was not the best part of the trip. So we leave D.C. the next day, and we go to Philly. Well, first we go to Lancaster, and we go see the Sight and Sound production of Joshua. Now, if you're not familiar with Sight and Sound, you ever get a chance to go to Branson or Lancaster, you've got to go to one of their shows. They are over-the-top amazing. I mean, these people know how to do it right. Phenomenal, massive production. I mean, live animals on stage and going up the aisles. I mean, it's just incredible. And they've done David and Esther and Daniel and all these other cool stories. Right now they're playing in Lancaster Joshua, which for me was incredible. My favorite Bible verse, the one I always sign when people ask me to sign a book or their Bible or whatever, Joshua 1:9, have not I commanded you, be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, either be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with you, whithersoever thou goest. So getting to see this musical was very cool for me, but also for our graduates. And then we drive to Philly, and we get Independence Hall to ourselves. So we get an after hours. We were filming for some of our new courses coming up, and the students got to actually sign the Declaration of Independence in the room where the Founding Fathers signed it 250 years ago. Let that sink in, folks. In the year of the 250th, our Patriot Academy scholars got to finish off their year where they've been with us at the campus for a year, and they've been learning all about the Declaration. I mean, that's what I teach them pretty much every chance I get to talk to them. They've been learning apologetics and the biblical foundation of America and how the Bible produces good citizens and all of these things. And then they got to cap it all off in the room in Independence Hall, signing the Declaration of Independence. Incredibly cool. That's part of why we're building Independence Hall at the Patriot Academy campus in Constitution City, Texas, because I want people to be able to have that experience. Even though it'll be a replica, you'll feel like you've stepped back in time and get to do the same thing at our campus for years to come. But anyway, so they got to do Independence Hall, sign the Declaration. Right next door, if you've ever been there, and maybe some of our listeners are very familiar with this, if you're especially live in the area, but Independence Park is made up of Independence Hall, Congress Hall, and the Liberty Bell display, and Congress Hall is just right next door to Independence Hall. Small room like the Assembly Room in Independence Hall. Excuse me. And it's where Congress met before they moved into the new U.S. Capitol. And that would have been, roughly 1791 to right before they moved into those rooms that I was talking about earlier in 1800. And so that room, Congress Hall, is set up like it was whenever they were there, and we got to basically conduct a Congress in that room where the Founding Fathers did it for those first 10 years. I mean, I'm talking Frederick Augustus Muhlenberg as Speaker of the House. He's a pastor out of New York. John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg, his brother, pastor out of Virginia, also in that first Congress. And these kids got to sit there and debate bills in that very room. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. Then, of course, we went over to the Liberty Bell and just had a great time. And on the way home, let's see, that was Thursday. We did the next day we actually went to the Valley Forge battlefield. We went to Freedom's Foundation in Valley Forge, another great organization. They've been doing incredible work since 1952, I believe it was, when Eisenhower helped to found that. And they're a lot like Patriot Academy from the standpoint of the purpose is to show Americans, to teach Americans good civics, and to understand why the American value system is the best. Or as James Madison said, it's the worst form of government, other than every other one. So in other words, it's the best one out there, even though it's flawed. But Freedom's Foundation does a great job. They've got some incredible statues and monuments and whatnot, and I wanted the kids to see the big bronze monument of George Washington kneeling in prayer with his sword by his side, but kneeling in prayer there at Valley Forge. And then they also have this really cool Bill of Responsibilities monument. We actually did an episode on this in Chasing American Legends. If you haven't seen that, go to patriotacademy.com, go to the store there, and get Chasing American Legends. Anyway, all of that, and then on the way home, we went to the Ark. If you've never been to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati, it's amazing. Ken Ham did a phenomenal job with this. I mean, just first class all the way, and the students had an amazing time there. And then we got home last night. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, our listeners, because so many of you support what we're doing at Patriot Academy, and anytime you support American Family Association, you're helping Patriot Academy as well. It's a great way to finish the year, and I just want you to know, man, there's help on the way. These kids are so well grounded. They're so good. I cannot believe we did this 10-day. How many miles? I think we did 3,000 miles or something crazy. All these places, hardly any sleep. Most of them got sick, on the trip because they were just, wearing out their immune system, and not a single complaint. Just joyful, met every challenge head on, served each other, prayed for each other. Just it was incredible. And I want you to know, help is on the way. These are the caliber of leaders that we are raising up at Patriot Academy and at the Patriot Institute. And by the way, applications are going to be opening soon for the fall Patriot Institute for next year. We had 27 this year. Maybe we'll do the same. Maybe we'll double. Who knows? Maybe we'll triple this year. We've got scholarships available. We've got just incredible opportunities for people. So if that sounds intriguing to you, go to patriotacademy.com. If you got a young person in your life that you think at 17 maybe they want to do their senior year with us, they can finish out their high school, whatever they've got left, especially if they were homeschooling. It's much easier, but they can finish that out with us in the final year. They can double up and do the curriculum that we have going as well. We had 3 of the 27 this year. That's what they did. We called it a super senior year. They finished their senior year with us. But, you might have somebody that's 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Maybe we had several students that had already gotten a college degree, and they still came and did the year with us because of the specialized training that we do. And then a lot of them were just figuring out what does God want me to do? What's my gifting? What's my area that He has put into my heart? What are the desires He's put into my heart? We spent a lot of time working on that with them, and they're just, man, we're launching them this Saturday when they graduate. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you got young people in your life, you need to send them to patriotacademy.com and tell them to look up the Institute. You'll see a lot of programs at our website. Most of our programs are short, 3 days, a week, but the Institute is 9 months here in Constitution City, Texas, at the Patriot Academy campus. And, man, I'm telling you, you will not regret it. You will absolutely be thrilled. Maybe you want to even help scholarship some students. Maybe you don't have a kid you want to send, but you financially can help. Well, get on our website and donate a scholarship for a student from around the country to come. You send us those kiddos at that 17 to 25 age, I can guarantee you we'll send you back a leader. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
Hi, I'm Doug Chamberlain, host of Family Health Checkup. For over 30 years, Samaritan members have come together to share medical costs and lift each other up in prayer. Now, I'm excited to tell you about Redeem Health Share Ministry, Samaritan's next generation of healthcare sharing. Redeem offers affordable, flexible programs that reflect your values and help you manage medical costs with confidence. Each month, members contribute a share amount to help pay each other's medical bills, and you choose the providers and treatments that are right for your family. It's not insurance, it's a community of believers supporting one another through life's health challenges. So, whether it's a routine visit or a sudden emergency, there's a caring Christian community walking with you every step of the way. Redeem Health Share. It's more than health care. It's hope. It's healing. It's faith in action. Call 1-844-REDEEM-0 today. Join the movement. Share joyfully. Live redeemed.
Candace talks about finding out she was pregnant. Thankfully, an ultrasound provided by Preborn allowed her to hear her baby's heartbeat.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
Preborn currently has clinics that do not have ultrasound machines. Would you consider a leadership gift and sponsor a machine today? These life-saving machines cost $15,000, more than most centers can afford. Your donation will save countless lives for years to come. Dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/AFR.
And my father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution coach, and glad to be home, but so thankful for the trip we just had with the Patriot Institute scholars. Now, there's a lot of headlines that I have not been able to get to over the last couple of weeks that I got to at least comment on, and I would love to hear from you as well. 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. Let's start with the Supreme Court decision on racial gerrymandering. Again, if you're a listener, a longtime listener, you know I have ranted about this for years. If you're a Patriot Academy follower, literally for decades, I've always been against racism. That should be simple, right? But when you're using race to determine anything, that's racism. So if you're treating people different based on race, that is racism. It is wrong. It is anti-biblical. It should be neither Jew nor Greek. It should be neither rich or poor. Everybody treated the same under the law. And this whole Democrat racism that has permeated our culture for way too long. They have always been racist. They were the ones that fought for slavery. They are the ones that had white-only primaries. They are the ones that wanted to prevent blacks from voting. Democrats have always been racist. They just kind of change depending on what they think is going to be most politically advantageous to them. So, whereas they were racist against blacks and giving a disadvantage to blacks for most of their history, they switched that in the last 50 years and decided, you know what, we'll figure out a way to use blacks in order to get political power, claiming that we're helping them, when in fact they ended up disempowering black communities by government taking over everything, and then it became anything against the white man, right? So now the racism from Democrats is anything that can be anti-white. That's going to be, in the Democrat playbook of what they're doing. So racial gerrymandering is where you use race to divide the people in order to guarantee that an elected representative, Congress, legislature, whatever, is of a certain skin color. Now, if that just rubs you wrong and sounds wrong to you, then you have an innate sense of justice that one should not be judged by the color of their skin. They should be judged by the content of their character. You should be elected to office based on what you're for, based on your character, based on the job you're going to do for your constituents, not because your color of your skin happens to be red, white, yellow, black, or brown. None of that, not one of those categories should guarantee you a seat in Congress. Otherwise, we're being racist. If we're choosing a representative or guaranteeing that a representative is white, wouldn't people be against that? If we draw the lines to make sure that a congressman or congresswoman has white skin, most people would say, no, that's wrong. Why is it not also wrong to say we're going to guarantee that someone has black skin or brown skin or yellow skin or red skin or some combination of all of the above, which is what's kind of honestly comical in today's culture, where we don't have the same opposition to being married to someone just because their skin pigment is a little bit different than ours. Culturally, I can understand people saying, well, this culture, whether it's white, black, brown, whatever, is different than our particular culture. There are different cultures within the black community, within the brown community, within the Caucasian community, whatever. I can understand people saying, wow, I don't know if I want to be, in my case, I'm a country boy, all right? So I'm pretty redneck, I admit it. And so there's a lot of uppity white folks out there that would not want their daughter or son married into my family because, we don't talk so good. I'm adding a little in here, okay? But the point is, that kind of stuff I can kind of understand because your lifestyles are different or whatever. But doing it based on the color of skin, that's absurd. It always has been absurd. It's always been wrong. And it's the same with voting. It's the same with representation and gerrymandering. You should not draw districts to guarantee that someone of a particular color of skin gets elected. I've always ranted about that. I will continue to rant about that. In fact, you might remember me being very upset with this Supreme Court for actually upholding racial gerrymandering just a couple of years ago with cases out of, I believe it was actually Louisiana, which is the one that they just actually went the other way on, and I think it was Alabama. I can't remember. Okay, so this decision, though, this 6-3 decision, actually goes the opposite direction of the last 60 years of Supreme Court decisions and says, no, you can't use racial gerrymandering, that you don't draw maps based on color of skin. That is racist. It's what we genuinely believe is unconstitutional because it's not equal protection under the law. You're separating people and treating them different under the law dependent upon their color of skin. That's wrong. It's evil. It's unconstitutional as well. All right. So the Supreme Court's decision to do this is a big, big deal. It means, honestly, just give you kind of a general idea. You've heard me talk about the illegal aliens being counted in the census, meaning that even more important than being counted in the census itself is being counted and factored in the apportionment, which is to say when we do redistricting and we redraw the lines in each state to determine where the congressional districts are going to be within that state, that if you count non-citizens, you're going to skew the numbers. Your districts, you're going to have more districts from the big cities where they have sanctuary cities and where they encourage illegal aliens to come and where they give benefits. They put them up in hotels. They basically pay for them to come into their city so that they can be counted in the census so that they then get an extra member representing them in Congress. Maybe the whole state gets an extra member because all of a sudden they have an extra million illegal aliens in that state. And if you count those million in the census, now that state gets an extra representative in Congress, and states that followed the law and didn't have sanctuary cities and didn't give all these incentives for people to come illegally, they lose a representative in Congress. So that piece, combined with the racial gerrymandering, combined with the just flat-out cheating by Joe Biden to tweak the formula in the census to skew which districts or which states got a certain number of representatives in Congress. You combine all of that, and you're talking about probably 40 Democrats in Congress right now that should be Republicans. In other words, when you just take those three things that should be just fair concept of justice, that the law should be the same for everybody, that fair representation in Congress. I think we actually fought a war over taxation without representation. Actually wasn't really about that, but that was one of the more popular slogans. I mean, certainly was something that motivated many of the founders like John Adams and John Hancock and others. But this whole idea that your representation in Congress is going to be stolen from you based on these three things that I just mentioned: racial gerrymandering, illegal aliens counted in the apportionment that results from the census, and then whoever's got power at the time able to tweak the formula before they do the final representation split up for the 435 members of Congress across the country. When you do those three things, you have at least 40 seats right now in Congress that, because the Democrats have done those three things, all three are immoral, illegal, unconstitutional. They've got 40 seats in Congress they should not have. Let that sink in for a second. The majority in Congress right now is 3 or 4 votes. So that's why you don't see any of the major issues of the Trump agenda being passed in Congress. It's why he's having to do everything via executive orders, because you only lose 4 Republican votes roughly. I forget the exact numbers, either 3 or 4 or 2 now, I don't know. Then you don't get it through. The Democrats are all sticking together to say no to everything that President Trump wants to do, even though a vast majority of Americans elected him to do those things. And think about how different that would be if you had 40 more Republicans right now than what you have. Be a whole different ballgame. So, back to the news item. The Supreme Court issues this incredible decision, and how should people respond to this? Let me give you one example. Ron DeSantis in Florida. All these whiners out there, these wimpy, these total, I'm trying to think of nice words to use here. These let's just say the opposite of men of Issachar. What's a man of Issachar understands the times and knows what to do. In other words, you know what time it is. You understand the battle in front of you. You understand what the enemy is doing. And if the enemy is scratching and clawing and taking ground, if they're playing hardball and defeating you and stealing literally your country from you, then you've got to fight back. And you've got to use every tool you have. Now, I'm not saying you have to cheat. I'm not saying you have to do anything underhanded, but you should use every power you have and push it to the limit. I mean, use all of it in order to save the country, in order to protect your children and grandchildren's future. And Ron DeSantis fights like that. And so what did he do in response to this Supreme Court ruling? In 2 days, not 2 weeks, not 2 months, not 2 years, in 2 days, he produced a redistricting map in Florida that was constitutional, that followed the law, unlike Virginia's. Don't forget the Virginia redistricting of a couple of weeks ago absolutely violated all kinds of Virginia Constitution law, their own Virginia Constitution, and all kinds of Virginia laws regarding redistricting. Okay, they literally cheated to do this, and that's why I think theirs will ultimately be struck down, and they won't be able to do their 10 Democrats, 1 Republican redistricting. If they had done it legally, if they'd actually gone through the redistricting process according to their own state constitution, I'm not even talking about U.S. Constitution or federal law, according to their own state constitution, if they'd followed all those rules, okay, there's nothing you can do to stop them. 10 Democrats, 1 Republican in a state that's 50-50, probably not fair, certainly not, equitable, but legal. You can do that. Just look at these northeastern states that have done that for years and years and years. Ron DeSantis is taking Florida from 28 to 24-4. So a 4-vote increase for Republicans if these districts hold and people actually win those races. And he did it in 2 days. Folks, that's leadership. That's playing hardball. Hey, Indiana, you listening? Hey, Kansas, you listening? Hey, all these other red states that have refused to do this? Hello? Look at what Ron DeSantis just showed you how to do. Frankly, even Texas, who was one of the brave ones that took the lead here, and my friend Phil King in the Senate led the way to make it happen, and potentially a 5-vote pickup in Texas based on that. And by the way, that one was just upheld. But, I mean, Texas could go even further based on this Supreme Court decision. So, hey, maybe they need to meet again, pick up 2 or 3 more seats as a result of that. You might say, what's it matter, Rick, if it's 2 seats? You know, what's the big deal out of 435? If the majority's only 2 or 3 or 4, 2 seats could mean everything in these midterms. And don't tell me you don't have time to do it. Look at what Florida just did. So I think Ron DeSantis has thrown down the gauntlet and absolutely shown all of these other red states, stop being wimps, get it done. Fight fire with fire. Do it constitutionally. Do it legally. Look, if California, same thing, you know, and I think you're going to have to say at the end of the day that they probably followed the law. Not saying it was good or right or fair, or that you're going to have equitable representation out of their, what do they have, 50-something congressional seats, but legal. But Republicans, these wimpy Republicans, these opposite of men of Issachar that understand the times and know what to do. It's like they have no idea what time it is, and if they know what to do, they have no courage. They've got jelly for backbones. We need people like Ron DeSantis that have enough backbone to make a freight train take a dirt road. Hat tip Paul Sika for that line. I've been using it for 20 years since I heard him say it. All right, listen, this is a big deal, folks. This could determine the majority, which could determine what happens for the next 2 to 20 years based on whether or not President Trump is able to follow through on this Making America Great Again, whether or not the Trump agenda is able to happen. There's going to be a couple of Supreme Court justices potentially in the next couple of years that will be appointed. This is a big deal. What happens in November in the midterms is huge. So I'm just encouraging every governor out there of a red state to play ball. Get in the fight and get this done. If you're a legislator in a red state and you've got any sway whatsoever to get this done, point to Florida. Share what just happened in Florida with everyone in your state and encourage them to do the same thing. There is still time. Don't let anybody tell you there's not time. They can absolutely get this done. Frankly, constitutionally, you could do this at the last minute. That's the power of the legislature. The legislature in each state has the ability to determine this and decide how it's going to get done. You just have to have the political will. Steve Deace has said this for a long time. It's not a nation of laws anymore. It's a nation of will. Which side has the will to do what needs to be done to win? That's not I'm not saying Machiavellian, anything goes, everything's okay. This is not, morals to the wind. It might be caution to the wind, but it's not. It doesn't mean you have to cheat. That's one of the problems with our people. Our people are busy arguing about Robert's Rules of Order. I said this back when in 2020, whenever you had this literally just absolute abuse of power and violations of the Constitution all over the place by state legislatures changing, or by governors and Supreme Courts changing election law. And you had some good people in Congress unwilling to argue against those electors being counted in the 2020 election. And I said, these guys think they're in a high school debate. They got their little bow tie on, and they're arguing Robert's Rules of Order in a high school debate, and they don't realize we're in the trenches in an actual war right now. They are assassinating our people. They are killing our leaders and attempting to kill President Trump over and over and over again. And we're over here playing, tiddlywinks and again, literally like we're in some sort of high school debate, and people are arguing procedure of some arcane rule. Oh, we have to preserve the Senate's, what is the not the integrity, what's the word they use? The institution of the Senate. No, you don't. You need to preserve the Constitution is what you need to preserve. You need to preserve liberty in this country is what you need to preserve. You need to preserve the right to vote. And call out people like Tim Walz, who lied in his press conference and said, we protected everyone's right to vote. No, you didn't. You made it so easy for people to cheat, you took away the protection of my vote. You made it so easy to cheat that now my vote means nothing because some illegal alien from the Congo is going to cancel out my vote. This is the future of the country at stake, folks. So every state needs to do what Ron DeSantis and the Florida legislature just did. Got to take a quick break. 888-589-8840. We'll get to your calls in our final segment. 888-589-8840. You are listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The mission of AFA is to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture. and give aid to the church here and abroad in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. AFA upholds the truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are worthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
This is Abraham Hamilton III with AFR, and we're sending Bibles. Here's Michael with Bible League International.
How do you hide God's Word in your heart if you've never even held it in your hands? Outside of the U.S., millions of Christians go without what is so basic to the Christian faith, and that is having a Bible. But you can do something about it today.
The need for a change is through the Word of God. It is so important for the Bible, the Word of God, to be made available in whatever languages that are needed by people.
People now are very open to hear the gospel.
Whoever comes our way and is able to give us a Bible, it will be better than giving us food to eat.
Millions of believers around the world are crying out for God's Word, something that you and I can access every day. So if you love your Bible, if God has used His Word to grow you, would you give that to others? We want to bless 5,000 waiting believers this month at $5 a Bible. $100 sends 20, $500 sends 100.
You can give by calling 800-YES-WORD, 800-YES-WORD, or visit sendbiblesnow.org. That's sendbiblesnow.org.
While in the emergency room with my wife, as she was struggling with the COVID-19 virus herself, and I looked at her, I said, "Are you scared?" And she said, a little bit, but I've been through worse.
The Certainty of Mankind's History with Uncertainty, an article by Peter Rosenberger.
And then, as her fever was approaching almost 103, she started singing "In Christ Alone." I place my trust and find my glory in the power of the cross. And that's how she has anchored herself in the certainty of Christ through her huge medical journey that has included 80 surgeries, both of her legs amputated, 100 doctors have treated her, 12 hospitals, and now the COVID-19 virus. And so when we live with those kinds of uncertainties, anchoring ourselves in Christ alone, that's the only place we can run to where there is certainty.
To read this article and more, visit afa.net/The Stand.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Rick Green.
Welcome back to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me, talking about the redistricting decision by the Supreme Court. Huge, and needs to be more than just Florida doing this. Louisiana, of course, is going to have to do something about what the court has said. Several other states that could do this if they are willing, if they have the courage to do so. Phone number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We'll go to Jeff in New Mexico first. Jeff, you're up, man. Go ahead.
Yes, Rick. How you doing today, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Yes, sir. Love the show. You're going to have to forgive me if I'm just repeating something that you've already stated. No
problem. Repetition's the mother of all learning.
Yes, sir. I really, truly believe that most Americans need to learn and understand the power grab that redistricting is state to state. It happened here in New Mexico, and it was just like overnight, and nobody hardly knew anything about it. You know, we are completely dominated.
What did you guys end up with?
What's that?
Do you know what y'all's breakdown is now? What'd y'all end up with?
I can't give you the logistics of it. I just I knew more about the logistics of it and then just further got angry, you know.
Yeah.
Just disgust. But down here, our fossil fuels in my area, you know, we're all more conservative over here. We're producing the money for the state. And in Santa Fe, in Albuquerque,
you pay the bills.
Yes, sir. And they hate us, you know, up in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and they just, obviously they thought they recognized a threat, I guess, maybe of people coming to a logical conclusion of conservative. And they thought a power grab was necessary.
Man, I just looked it up. You don't have any Republicans now. You've got both your U.S. senators and all 3 members of the U.S. House are Democrats. And what you're saying is so true. It's like that all over the place. The producers, the ones that pay the bills and produce the jobs and all of that, tend to be they love to take the money and then use that money to go against what those very people want and believe. And that's what the scavengers do. Ben Shapiro's book, Lions and Scavengers, describes it very well. Do you remember when, Jeff, y'all's redistricting happened?
Unfortunately, I'm at the age where time is starting to move faster and faster. But to me, it seems like it was
I hear you, brother.
Probably 2 years. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Probably about 2 years ago is what I'm guessing. And when you mentioned when we were talking about the logistics of it, I thought you were trying to get a better understanding of the layout, of how to cut it up into sections. You know what I'm saying? But yeah we're extremely dominated. Yeah. There is very few conservative voices.
Yeah, man, it's a shame. I wish, the concept is supposed to be that if you have, in New Mexico's case, you got 3 districts, then you would think at least one of the 3. I mean, the state is certainly at least, 35, 40% Republican. But even in Massachusetts and a bunch of those states that have 35, 40% Republicans, no Republican representation in Congress as a result of that. I was trying to find, let's see. Yeah, so even Trump got 46% in New Mexico. So yeah, it's you would think one of the 3 districts that you guys have would be Republican. Now it doesn't have to be that way. By the way, Jeff, thank you for calling in, man. I appreciate it. It is legal, not necessarily fair, but legal for a party when they have control to draw those lines any way they want. I mean, this goes back all the way to, literally Elbridge Gerry. So I was just standing in Independence Hall last week when the kids were signing the Declaration of Independence, thinking about Elbridge Gerry. Here's a guy that helped give us the Declaration and influenced the Constitution. I mean, just a very important founding father. And when he's governor of Massachusetts, they drew a line that looked lines for a district that looked like a salamander. And because he was for it, because it helped his party, that became the name gerrymandering. That's why we call it gerrymandering, and it's legal, okay? And every party does it. I mean, you go back, it's the Whigs, the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists. I don't care which party, Democrats, Republicans, everybody does it. And so the question is, as if you're following the law and you do it constitutionally and legally according to the statutes in your particular states, then should it be done? Actually, that's not the question. I'm wrong. That's not the question, because it's going to be done. Like there's no stopping that. That is part of human nature and power and politics. The question is, if you do break the law when you're doing it, if you don't follow the rules that everybody agreed to of how this process would take place, should you be stopped from doing that? And that, I think the answer is yes. I think if the Supreme Court doesn't strike down the Virginia redistricting, then you're basically saying to people, the rules don't matter. The law doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. If you have the power, it's like a mobocracy. Now you get to do whatever you want. It's basically French Revolution time. Anything goes, everything's okay. If you've got the power, the law of the tiger and the shark, and we know where that leads. Pure evil, mass murder. I mean, all the things that we've seen in history when you're not restrained by the rule of law. And so I think the decision on Virginia is going to be critical. What I don't know is whether or not, if the Supreme Court was to rule quickly, and this will be a state Supreme Court in Virginia that'll have to rule on this. If they rule quickly on this, then I don't know if there is time for Virginia to do it the right way, to actually follow the law, because I know theirs is a little bit like when I was a state rep in Texas. When you passed a law, you had to pass it twice on the House floor to send it over to the Senate. And so you basically what we called second reading. First reading was when it got assigned to committee, so you didn't actually discuss it at all. Second reading is when you have all the big debate. If you get it out of committee and you get it through calendars, you get it to the floor, it's debated on second reading. Well, then the next day is third reading, and you got to pass it again. Rules are a little different. You got to have 2/3 to amend it and all that. But bottom line is you got to pass it twice. In the same way, Virginia has this kind of lengthy process for amending their constitution, which is what was necessary for them to do redistricting mid-decade. And it requires, which I think is a lot of states do this, it requires 2 legislative sessions to pass it. And that way, it's a measured thing. You're taking your time. You're making sure. The counter to that, the way we do it in Texas, is you don't have to do it twice, but you got to get 2/3. So you got to have a supermajority in order to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot in Texas, and then the people have to vote with a majority. So, in our case, the Texas House is 150 members. You got to have 100 members vote for that constitutional amendment, and then in the Senate, you got to get 2/3 of 31. And so then it goes to the ballot, and the people get a chance to vote on it. In Virginia, you have to actually have it go through 2 legislative sessions. So I don't think there's any way they could do that, because I think it's even worded in such a way that it has to be a regular session. So the governor there, this left-wing, communist that they have as a governor, she could call a special session and they could pass it, and then call another special session and they could pass it. But I think even that would violate the way the Constitution of Virginia is set up, because it's got to be a regular session. I think that's right. I'm not looking at the notes or the constitutional language right now, but as I recall and looking at it when this first passed, I think that is correct. Anyway, all that to say, if they had done it legally, if they had done it constitutionally, more power to them. Not right necessarily, not fair, not equitable, but they have the power to do it. And frankly, red states should play ball and do the same thing if they do it legally and they do it the right way. Okay, we got Mary in Tennessee with a question about all the gerrymandering. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, I was really kind of wondering about this stuff, and how do we get it to what it's supposed to be if we know what that is?
You mean how do you get the redistricting process to be more fair, or meaning the specific districts?
Yeah, more constitutional, since we have a constitution with the federal, plus we've got every state got its own constitution too.
Yeah. Well, the federal constitution leaves it up to the states on how to draw their lines, how to do redistricting, and how to what we call apportionment. I think the only fair way, or the most fair way, is the way I should say that, because it's going to be unfair to someone always. and when it comes to redistricting, I haven't seen it be any better in states that have a commission that's supposed to be nonpartisan, but then who appoints the commission? And it's always partisans appointing the commission, and who has the majority on the commission. And there's no way to remove the human nature and the politics part of it, because you're literally drawing political lines. So you're gonna have politics influence. So my personal opinion is that the states that still have the legislature do the drawing of the districts is the best way to do it. I think there's no way to remove the politics of it. So you're always going to have some skewing of the districts, whichever party happens to be in power. And as long as you're, again, following the law, following the Constitution, then you have the right to do that. Okay, let's go to Randall in Tennessee. Randall, go ahead, man. You're up next. Sorry to make you wait so long.
I love your program.
Thank you.
Got a question. Have you been keeping up with what's going on in Alberta, and what is your opinion on that? How that might...
You're talking about the effort they want to become the 51st state thing?
That's correct. They're having a vote on that up there.
I take that back. I said that wrong. They're not saying they want to be the 51st state. They're saying they want to secede from Canada. We're the ones saying we might make them the 51st state. If they did. Man, I don't know. I haven't followed it in the last month or so. I was very intrigued by it. I think certainly what I would be pushing for if I was in their situation, where the Canadian government has become so socialist and frankly tyrannical in the way that they've governed, not just in COVID but beyond, when it comes to firearms and all kinds of things that they're doing. So I would certainly be pushing for it if I lived in a province and had anywhere close to the support or the political will in the community. If it's what the people want, then I think they should absolutely be able to do that. And I wish I could say I knew more about Canada's history with regard to the formation of the Canadian government and these provinces and how much they're like states, and in our case with America, the states created the federal government, and it's why they are the most powerful in the Constitution, why constitutional amendments have to go back to ratification, and why the states have the power to amend without the federal government involved at all. That is a mechanism ultimately giving the state legislatures the final say and the final power over what America looks like. They just don't use it. They should use it. That's why I'm a big proponent of Convention of States, Article 5 of the Constitution, because it rights the ship. It gets the power back in the right hands. I don't know about Canada. I don't know how they do that on the federal level, but just from a principle of association and people being able to determine their future and their fate, my knee-jerk reaction, again, without knowing the history and the legality of how their provinces are part of the Canadian government and what their constitutional clauses are on this sort of thing, I am all for a secession being allowed for large areas that get to a point where it's like Judah and Israel, and you just get to a point where you can't live together anymore, and you have to find a way to govern yourselves. Now, I know what you're thinking as you're listening to me say that, with only 2 minutes left in the program. Well, what about America? And what about the fact that we're so split? And what about the fact that our states are so different now? And people always say Texas should secede or California should secede or whatever. Look, at the end of the day, I think from a principle perspective, a state should have the right to do that. It's not like the Civil War anymore. It's not like those times. And the founders even questioned whether a republic could work when it got over 50 million people. So there's some arguments for why, just as a nature of man and self-governance and all of those things, that states should be able to do that. I don't think it's good. I think strategically it would be very bad if California seceded and was its own state. I think they would come under Chinese influence and other nations, and potentially either just through partnership or even potentially being part of them at some point. And then you've got literally the enemy on our doorstep instead of ocean away. Same for Texas. I used to think Texas seceding might be a good idea. I don't think that anymore. I think we have to stay together as a nation to be as strong as we need to be, and also because, as I started the program with, when Arlington National Cemetery and the students going there, every time I go there, I'm hit with the fact that Californians died for my freedom. There were people in Minnesota that were willing to go around the world and die for my freedom. There are people in Massachusetts. You get what I'm saying? In other words, we're in this together. We're a nation that has fought and bled together, sacrificed together, served each other, been at each other's throats like brothers and sisters tend to do. And there are people in this country that, I often say, I don't know if I can live with these people. They're that crazy. But at the end of the day, God has blessed this land as a nation, and I think there's a revival in the land and an awakening happening in the land. And those really, really bad blue states, the ones that are just doing horrible policies and punishing their people and doing terrible things, I think their people are waking up. And I think the pain is about to cause some people to get tough. The tough times are going to create some tough men in these states, and they're going to lead us back into good times in those states as well as the whole nation. I really believe that. That's my hope. That's why Patriot Academy exists. That's why we have Constitution coaches in every state and every community, because our hope is that we get another 250 years should the Lord tarry. And regardless of what the outcome is, duty is ours, results are God's. Go do your duty. I'll do mine. Let's do everything we can to make sure America gets another 250. Let's make America great again. To do that, we got to know what made America great in the first place, and that's why you listen to At the Core. Thanks for listening today. You've been listening to At the Core with Walker Wildmon and Rick Green.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast